Hello and welcome to Cloudforest Vibes. My name's Bobby, and this is how I grow orchids and carnivorous plants. Hello and welcome to Cloudforest Vibes. Today's video is going to be all about my grow tent setup and everything in it. All the components, everything that makes this setup. I've had a lot of requests to do this video, and my apologies for the delay, but I wanted to make sure I was thorough and got all the information together for you guys in a organized and good way. So here goes nothing. I did do this video early on, but I was still shooting videos on my phone and I definitely didn't get the quality that I wanted out of it. So I'm hoping this attempt is a lot better and a lot more informative. That way you guys can make a nice educated decision if you guys do choose to go down this route and try growing in a tent inside your home. Growing in a grow tent is absolutely the best decision I've made as far as growing inside the home. I was a windowsill grower at one point in time, and I will flash a picture up here quickly of my old setup, or my initial setup for growing orchids. It was basically a windowsill set up with a terrarium for the first couple of Panthes miniatures that I owned. And that only lasted a few months, to be honest. I ended up making my first little terrarium out of a 10-gallon tank from Walmart, and my miniatures went in that pretty quickly, and that's how I got into the orchidarium side of this. But I did the windowsill thing for several more months until I realized that what I really wanted was a greenhouse, which I can't have because I live in an apartment. So my first tent was about half this size. I'll put a picture up of that now, and it was a great step into doing this. I would love to have a bigger tent, but I think this is all I can really manage in this space and still have room to use the space for anything other than just an orchid tent. So anyhow, without further ado, let me get into this thing. I'm going to start with a tour on the outside, show you the tent itself, show you some of the components on the outside, the controls, things like that, and then we'll go inside and look at some of the modifications that I've made to make this more suitable for growing the way that I like to grow. So first and foremost, let's talk about the actual tent itself. This grow tent is the Ohuhu Greenhouse for Outdoors, large walk-in plant greenhouse. 3 tiers, 12 shelves, and it is 4.9 by 4.7 by 6.4 feet tall. This has been an absolutely great addition to the house, to the grow area, because it is very durable. The last one I had, the very first one I had, was a very cheap, thin, clear vinyl material, and I just didn't think it was going to last long term. The way that I want to grow in moist conditions, I think that long term that one would have fallen apart at the seams, and especially if I ever wanted to transplant it outdoor or onto a patio or anything, it would definitely never work out. Whereas this one, if I ever did have an opportunity to, I could easily move this outdoor in the more tolerable months and grow semi-outdoors, which would be very much ideal. The quality of this greenhouse is second to none, and I'll get in closer here, but I have to refocus, so one moment. This greenhouse has the Nylocore vinyl plasticky type material. It's a thick plastic, really nice, and it's very stable. The frame on the inside is metal. Let me get in here. Should probably keep this open. We'll have to go in a few more times. But the frame inside is metal. It's got these nice durable plastic connectors, and it's framed in components that are numbered and labeled and very easy to assemble. In addition to that, it's got these tie downs here, and it came with cords, so if you did choose to put this outside, you could anchor it down to the ground like a tent and stake it in place. Now unfortunately this item is currently unavailable on Amazon where I got it, but I remember paying between $65 and $75 for it at the time, and if you look on there right now, there should be other comparable products to this. If you look up indoor outdoor grow tent or orchid grow tent or anything of that nature, you should be able to find something that suits your needs or your environment perfectly fine, whether you choose to grow indoors or outdoors. The next and possibly most important, and maybe even the most overlooked piece of equipment that I have, that is 100% part of this greenhouse system's success is the white sheathing that I have on the floor. This is Coroplast, or corrugated plastic sheathing, and I bought this in 8-foot by 4-foot sections from Home Depot for about $20 each. It's not the cheapest stuff in the world, but I'll tell you what, as far as protecting your floor and your finishes in your home from the water and the condensation that will drip down inevitably, and giving you the ability to occasionally water but not go overboard inside your grow tent, this is absolutely a game changer. To take it to another level, there is an additional layer of plastic, sticky plastic, for protection underneath that, just in case, but you would be able to get by just fine with 2 layers of this if you chose, or even just 1 layer of this. I really wouldn't be that worried. To seam it all together down here, this is white Gorilla Tape. It is very strong, it has a really good adhesive, and it doesn't seem to mind getting wet occasionally as long as you don't let it sit in water. Without this, the sheathing would just overlap, water would still get underneath it, get down to the carpet, which I do have covered again with the sticky plastic, just in case. But again, no matter where you live, in your home, if you do choose to grow this way, the biggest problem you're going to have is watering inside, condensation, and ruining the finishes. If you have a wood floor, if you have carpet, if you have ceramic, anything like that, you really want to make sure it's protected, because growing orchids inside is rough. And what I mean by that is rough on the environment. If you take a look inside of my grow tent here, you'll see Michael McCarthy was quick to point out it is an absolute freaking mess. Leaves fall, you drop pots, water drips, all kinds of things happen. I even have, if we go in here, I can show you, that right there is live moss growing on the floor on some of the detritus in my greenhouse. No, I don't know about you guys, but I'm certainly happy that in my apartment that is not the carpet, because I really don't think the property management company would like that too much, and I certainly hope none of them are orchid lovers and recognize my voice, or this apartment. Anyhow, this is the floor. It is an absolute mess. Like I said, water drips down here. This tape is awesome. This has been in place for several years now. The seam is still good, and I really don't have any issues. The best part about this is I am a mess. So you can see where water's dripped. If you can imagine this as your carpet or wood floor or anything, it would be an absolute disaster for your home. So protecting that is a very, very important component and a very important part of operating this sort of a grow space inside your house. Please keep that in mind, guys. Having that said, I do utilize all kinds of little trays all over the place to catch the drippings underneath my plants and underneath my mounts. And that is a huge, huge part of the success to my system. As much as you can contain and mitigate the amount of water inside this system, the better. And we'll get to more on that later once we get back in here. But for now, we're going to keep this thing going on the outside. Now I'm crammed over here next to my grow tent to show you that I do have this thing directly in front of a window, and I do have some really cheap shade netting that I bought off of Amazon as a curtain that I use. Sometimes it covers a little bit more, sometimes it's back a little bit further. It just depends on the season and where the sun is and the angle of the sun coming in through that window is. All my brightest plants grow in this corner, but again, we can talk about that on the inside. But being that is the case, I don't have a whole lot of natural sunlight to work with. So one of the absolute keys to my success in this grow area are these two bad boys to my right. I have not one, but two grow lights over this tent. These are the absolute key to my success. This is how I'm able to have an extended day length. I have a southeast facing window, but it's more east facing than south, and I get great morning light. However, outside this window is a lot of trees. I get the best light in the wintertime. It's fantastic for my deciduous plants and plants that grow in an area where trees lose their leaves. It's very, very conducive to that. I think that's why I do well with dendrobiums and certain bulbophyllums and things like that. However, when it comes to being able to give your plants full sun, full light all day long, I have an absolute huge disadvantage. These lights have helped me be able to find a good balance and maintain a way to grow my orchids all year long in any kind of conditions, light-wise, that I find suitable for them. I can easily extend my day length or shorten my day length just based off of the natural solar schedule and adjustments on the timers on these very lights. This light here on the left is a PARFACTWORKS 500 watt Cree CQB full spectrum LED grow lamp with 2 channels. It has 2 buttons on the top. It's got a grow booster and a bloom booster setting, and I basically all year long keep the bloom booster on. I'm going to come down here. Hopefully you guys don't get blinded. Nope, you're going to get blinded. Hopefully that's not too bad. You guys can see that this has red, natural sunlight, blue, and ultraviolet all in the same. I don't think that's necessarily the most important thing, but what I wanted to make sure I didn't have was a light that was blurple. As you can see, this has a pretty natural shade. It's a little bit bluish, but it's not nearly that bad. 500 watts is extremely powerful, but I do have it at a pretty good height above this grow tent to ensure that I'm not burning the hell out of my plants with all the direct light from this high power LED. I would actually like to upgrade the lighting even further and go to 1000 watt on this side and move this 500 watt fixture over to this side to provide more light deeper into the shelves of the grow tent, or better light saturation if you will. But I have yet to do that. That is a project I'm going to hopefully be working on sometime this year. Unfortunately, again, this product is not available on Amazon at the moment, but I do remember paying around $150 for it, I believe, and at the time it was a great deal. It's lasted great, it works great, it runs great, and I've had absolutely fantastic success with this light with my plants. This light here is my original fixture that I had over my original tent, and I swapped it over to my shadier growing side of the tent, which is this side away from the window, and I've had enormous results with that as well. This light here is a Canagro Cree XB 3590 CQB LED grow light, full spectrum. It's special again because it's not blurple, and the way it's designed, it has this projector lens on the bottom of it here that gives the beam an extremely wide angle. You can get this on Amazon right now for $112 on Prime, and I really couldn't recommend a better starter light if you're going to set up a small grow tent or just get your hands into adding some additional supplemental lighting for any of your orchids. This would be great for a windowsill grower who wasn't growing in optimal lighting, or anybody for that matter growing anything indoors who wants to grow a little bit brighter and supplement their plants with a little bit more natural light and not have the blurple effect. Again, this is a absolutely, completely natural light color. No blurple, no red, no blue, no nothing. It's bright as hell. It hurts to look at it. I hope I'm not blinding you guys by looking at this the way that we are, but again, I wanted to take a good look at these and let you guys know that really the true key to my success growing indoors is being able to provide really high quality lighting to these plants all year long. Now, I have both of these lights hooked up at a surge protector on my wall on timers. The timers are essential because, again, I really don't want to have to worry about my setup. I don't want to have to come in here and flip switches. Sometimes I do. For instance, today we can flip these back because I woke up Saturday morning. It's a gray, miserable, nasty, rainy day, and I knew that my plants weren't going to get the morning sun they would normally get through the window. So if I'm here and I'm able to, I can come in here and I can flip the switches, I can turn the lights on earlier and make sure that my plants, even though they're not going to get a lot of sun for the day, are going to have adequate lighting and not be set back by darkness, more or less. As they sit now, my 500 watt light comes on around noon and it runs till 8 p.m. My 100 watt light comes on around 10 a.m. and it also stays on until 8 p.m. 8 p.m. is lights out. If there's any ambient lighting outside, it might get in here until 9 or so during the summertime, but more or less 8 p.m. that's it. Sporadically during the year I may adjust this and give it more or less light depending on how much sun they're getting through the window, but that's a whole nother story as well. The bare bones backbone of what I'm trying to tell you is that timers are great. Use them if at all possible if you decide to go with lighting. It's just one less thing that you have to worry about or check on or deal with if you're growing inside the home. I'm going to throw a picture up of some timers I found on Amazon. This is not exactly the timer that I'm using. I'm sorry I could not find those. The ones that I'm using are, again, currently unavailable. But you should be able to get these for relatively inexpensive, and you can spend a lot more money on them if you'd like. But if you're just trying to get into it and just trying to find a timer that works, this should work just fine for you. This is exactly what I would buy right now if I were just getting into this. Now, as far as further automation goes in my growing environment, I use Inkbird humidity and temperature controllers to help me keep my environment stable and maintain some sort of equilibrium at all times. So far, I've had great success with these units. I have no real complaints, although I can say that they aren't as straightforward as they may seem. You do have to kind of outsmart them sometimes if you want to make them act outside the box. So what I mean by that is I don't necessarily use this for heating and cooling or humidifying and dehumidifying necessarily all the time as one might think. What I mean by that is if you want to just heat and cool, humidify and dehumidify, absolutely straightforward. But these units are capable of doing so much more if you want them to do. But again, you will have to kind of fool them or outsmart them to make them think outside the box. So I'll get into a little bit more of that later, but I don't really utilize that in the tent as much as I do inside my orchidarium. I use these exact same units except for the fact that my temperature controller over there is the Wi-Fi one, but I use Inkbird units there and I have great success as well. I will say, I'm not gonna lie, I prefer the original Inkbird temperature sensor to the Wi-Fi unit simply because whenever you make an adjustment on the Wi-Fi unit, it will initiate the unit. Here I can make adjustments, and as long as I don't exceed my minimum or maximum, it won't engage the actual stuff that is plugged into it. So they're great units. Both of them have an extension that comes off of it that has two outputs on, just like this one. The humidity I use both. The temperature controller I actually only use one because my heater is actually controlled by a different unit. I only use this to control fans, and that's what I mean by thinking outside the box a little bit. I have my cooling set up on this with a circulation fan. I used to run 2 circulation fans. I would have them for heating and cooling, but one of them burned out and I just never replaced it. It actually took up valuable room that I had plants growing in, and the one that I have actually seems to really do the trick. It's just fine for the tent that I have. Again, the humidity unit runs a humidifier on the inside and a dehumidifier on the inside, which we'll take a look at both of those. And this runs my main circulation fan on the inside. My heater is ran by a different unit, and that's what we're going to take a look at next before we make our way inside the tent and look at what I have in there. Now, this unit here is one of the most important components of my greenhouse setup because it helps me be even further automated and make sure that I can maintain some sort of a temperature differential throughout the year, no matter what. This here is a dual technology photocell thermostat. I'm going to throw a picture up. It'll give you better specs on it. It's got multiple adjustment settings. You can do heating or cooling. You can have a 3, 5, or 7 degree temperature differential, and you have a day and a night setting. It's got a little photocell here, so I keep it hung just like this in the window. When the sun comes up or when the grow lights are on reflecting off the window, it is on its daytime settings, and right now I have the daytime setting for about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. My nighttime temperature stays around 60 degrees year-round and is also adjustable, so again I'm able to maintain some sort of a temperature differential year-round. When suitable, I'll keep the window open I'll make sure that I get that really nice drop in temperature in this room, and this thing does all the work. In the daytime, the sun comes up, the daytime setting initiates because the photocell picks up any sort of light, and it will bump it up to 75 degrees automatically without me touching a single knob. That is why I switched over to this for my heating instead of the Inkbird, because this I don't have to play with. I hang this up, I plug everything in, I set it to what I want it to be, and the light does the rest. It is absolutely awesome. Unfortunately, this specific product is no longer available on Amazon as well, but I did find one that is comparable, and I'm going to put a picture up of that now, just in case you guys want to look at something like this for your greenhouse, grow tent, or whatever setup you choose, any sort of heating with. This is awesome. The last thing I keep out here that I use to help me monitor my conditions is one of these. This is an AccuRite temperature and humidity sensor, and I just keep this hanging on the curtain rod right above the window, and it helps me monitor my overall temperature in the room. After growing for a while, you kind of will get used to your conditions and the ambient humidity and temperature in your room and how it will affect your growing conditions inside the tent, because that's a huge factor. Whether it's 30% humidity or 60% humidity or 80% humidity in here, or whether it's 55 degrees in here or 82 degrees in here, it affects the conditions inside the grow tent. So it's very important to monitor those conditions at all times. That way you can make adjustments if needed to the temperature and humidity settings and whatnot in your environment to make sure that you're growing in optimal conditions at all times for your orchids and whatever plants you decide to grow. Having all that said, it's time to enter the tent and take a look at some of the tech, starting with this heater right down here. This is the heater I use. This is a Vornado MVH Vortex heater with 3 heat settings, adjustable thermostat, tip over protection, auto safety shut off, and all that goodness. I keep this on the lowest temperature setting, and I keep it on a 4. The reason that I decided to choose this one is it's got a built-in fan that helps to circulate the heat. Once you tune it up here, this is the fan setting. You can have it on really low, you can have it on really high. This is what's considered to be a whole room heater. So because it has the built-in fan integrated into it, this thing heats up my greenhouse super fast. I really like it. The first unit lasted about 1.5 years, and I did have to replace it, but I think it just got too moist. I was keeping it way more moist in here the first year than I should have, and it just messed with the electrical components of it, and the fan stopped working. So once the fan stopped working, I got rid of it. The heat element still worked, but once the fan stopped working, I got rid of it because I really wanted to make sure that I had a heater that was able to disperse its own heat on its own and make sure it wasn't going to have any real hot spots and fry my plants. So I really do recommend this. Again, I found this on Amazon. You can still find this on Amazon. It runs for around $62 or $63. I'll put a pop-up up of a picture of it just so you guys can see, but highly recommended for the tent. It does a really great job, and this is what's hooked up to that thermostat that I showed you with the day and night setting. So this big loud thing right next to it is my fan. This is a clamp fan. It's designed for the greenhouse. I actually, for some reason, cannot find this on my orders on Amazon, but I will put something up that I used to use before I found this one that did a really great job as well. The most important statistics on this is that it's a 6-inch clip-on fan. It's got 2 speeds, and it's pretty quiet considering that some of the fans this size are extremely loud. It sounds like a wind tunnel, but this does a great job. Again, I keep it mounted to this. It's made for greenhouses again, so it's made to clamp right on the bars here. You should be able to find a comparable product if you look up greenhouse fan or clip-on greenhouse fan or clip-on grow tent fan on the Amazon search button. If you look around enough, you should be able to find something very similar to this. And a lot of technology that you find like this on Amazon is kind of limited, so you'll have something like this. It's a great product. It'll run for like a year or so, and if you ever go to replace it, you'll notice it's not there again, but you'll find something almost identical to it with a different name at a similar price, and so on and so forth. So a lot of this stuff is cheap Chinese technology. It's just how it is. It's how the Amazon market works and how the internet market works nowadays. So one manufacturer builds it for a while, they go out of business, they make their money, and then another one takes it over. So the picture I put up, the pop-up of this, is a Vivo Sun 6-inch portable desk clip-on fan for home, 2-speed whisper quiet operation. Again, that's unavailable right now. This one I can't find on Amazon anymore, but there are several products that are pretty comparable to this and the other one. So if you look, you will find it. This is what I have hooked up to my Inkbird for the cooling setting, and I only have this thing kick on when my greenhouse hits about 75 or 76 degrees. That is variable depending on season, but again, I use this as a main circulating fan down here towards the ground, and it blows air straight up through the tent into the roof area and circulates cooler air down here up into the hotter stagnant air that likes to linger in the roof. So very, very vital element and very, very vital part of my grow tent, and keeping things cool and keeping the humidity and moist air moving at all times. Something else I have spotted through this grow tent are these. These are 6-inch computer fans, cooling fans, and I have 8 of them scattered throughout this grow tent, zip tied into various places in the framing, helping me circulate air and keep my plants not only cool, but helping me keep all the humid air moving around at all times to ensure that my high humidity that I keep in this tent doesn't affect my plants in a negative manner. These are awesome. I have these wired in with some really cheap wire that I got also off of Amazon, some low voltage wire connectors, some shrink wrap. That way I know that the water and the humidity inside this greenhouse isn't going to do any damage to the electrical over long term. These fans I could not find. Again, I apologize, but I've got a comparable product I'll throw a picture up of that you can find on Amazon right now, as well as the wire, the connectors, and all that stuff if I haven't already. I have these wired into some normal 12-volt cell phone type adapters, and I have them hardwired and just plugged in and running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Before I got these fans, I noticed that I had a really hard time getting my mounts to dry out in this tent. The tent holds humidity and moisture like you wouldn't believe, and air circulation is absolutely imperative if you're going to decide to grow in a tent like this. You can always do things like leave the tent unzipped partially throughout the year depending on the season. When it's really, really hot outside, I tend to unzip it more. When it's cooler outside, I'll keep it partially unzipped down to, about a foot or so off the ground, but I'm always playing with that throughout the year, as well as utilizing these circulating fans to not only create pressure in this environment, which brings passively fresh air in through the crack and bad air out through the crack, but I'm always playing with exactly how much I'm leaving my tent unzipped to help me maintain humidity and to help these things bring in fresh air and circulate air within my environment. They aren't absolutely necessary, but I do feel like if you do not use these, you're going to be very limited on the kind of plants you can grow, because not all plants want to grow in such high humidity, and again, this tent holds it like you wouldn't believe. So about halfway through my first season of using my tent, I had added these, and a few months later I decided to add this thing. This is a Savon dehumidifier, and this has been a pretty much life-saving addition to my grow tent. This was cheap. I got it on Amazon. I'll throw a pop-up up of this because you can definitely still get this. This is the Savon electric dehumidifier. It's good for 205 square feet. It's portable and compact, 16-ounce capacity. It's pretty quiet, and it's really nice. It has an automatic shut-off. I keep this plugged into my Inkbird on the dehumidification setting, and I keep this plugged in to the humidification setting. But this has really helped me maintain and mitigate moisture or excess moisture in the air in my environment. I empty this thing about every day or every other day depending on the season again. And another great thing about this is during the winter time it actually adds a little bit of extra heat to the environment. This is always spitting out relatively warm air when it's on, and I do have to be careful of what I store above it as far as plants goes. I don't have anything directly above the output of it, but I do utilize it again to help me heat this thing in its own little way during the winter time. This thing runs all year long. Again, one of the most important elements of growing in a tent successfully is being able to mitigate the moisture or the excess moisture that's in this environment, and I highly recommend looking into some sort of dehumidifier if you plan on doing that. This right here is my humidifier. I have this hooked up to the Inkbird as well. This I believe you can still find on Amazon as well for around $40 or $45. This is a Honeywell Mistmate Cool Mist humidifier. It's 9.5 by 8.5 by 8.5 inches. It's got an auto shut off. It's really easy to fill, and for me, it's all I need. I had a much bigger humidifier in here at first. It took up all kinds of space. I wasn't able to put basically any plants at all over here, and I decided to downsize and go to this thing, and I'll tell you what, I filled this thing up, and a testament to how well this tent holds moisture is the fact that if I fill this up to the brim, I am not going to have to fill this half-gallon tank again for at least 2 or 3 weeks. No matter what, the only time this thing really runs is when I have the zippers up at least halfway, and that's in the morning under the intense sun, or if I have the door open when I'm doing maintenance and watering and working in here. Otherwise, this is more or less just a fail-safe, just in case anything catastrophic were to happen and my humidity were to drop down below 70%. This thing kicks on, and with all the circulation fans everywhere, the humidity gets around really quickly, and it brings the ambient humidity back up quickly to a desired level. Again, both of these are controlled off the Inkbird, and this is the little sensor for it. That sensor back there is the Inkbird temperature sensor, and the other one you see is for the dual temperature one, the dual technology one. Standing up again and having a look around, you'll notice that I have this all over the walls of my grow tent. This is black plastic poultry netting I got from Home Depot. It was relatively inexpensive. I'll throw a picture up of it in its package. That way if you guys are looking for it, you can find it. It was around $12 or $13 for a roll. I got 2 rolls. I only ended up using 1, and I did have 1 left over. So I'm thinking about adding some more. I'd like to get some up the walls here to some degree to give me some flexibility with hanging plants a little bit higher and giving them more room to be pendulous. I'd like to add some back on this back wall to be able to give my bright growing wall more height so I can spread plants off of these vertical bars, because all they do is just fall down and it would be really nice to prevent that from happening. And who knows, I may do something else, but that's the only modification I've really made. All I did with that was I zip tied it on to the bars in 2 layers all the way down full height, so it gave me plenty of room to hang all of these little mounts. Just about infinite adjustability. The only place I don't have it is right in front of this window, because at the time I didn't have any plants hanging there, but I may end up adding some, you never know. I do kind of want to move these plants and get them out of the way from blocking so much light. I'm thinking about doing some other modifications in here. I'm thinking about actually hanging some bars or some PVC piping from one corner across, giving me some more hanging space here as well as here. That could get those plants out of the window and kind of move them back a bit, get them underneath my grow lights. But other than that, I really don't know what else I could do besides add a little bit more of this just to utilize the last bit of unused space in this grow tent. The shelving inside this unit is metal. I did notice it's a bit flimsy. It's not so strong, so what I did do and what I would recommend to you guys is to zip tie it in place if you have a chance. That'll make it a lot more firm. Otherwise, if you pile too much stuff on it or weight, it will most likely collapse. I do have another one of these inside, it never ever reads the same as what the one on the outside reads. I do not know which one to believe, but I have it in here just because, to be honest. So I might need to replace that and get one that I can trust a little bit better, but it helps me get a little bit of peace of mind at least, knowing what the extremes could be at least, because that seems to only really register the extremes. So that's my video for today, guys. A lot of you guys have asked me for this video for quite a while. I'm so sorry again for the delay, but I really hope you enjoyed it. I put a lot of work into this. I really wanted to make sure it was accurate and helpful for all of you guys. In case you want to dive into this sort of growing, it's really helpful again if you grow in an apartment or if you have limited space. I think that there might always be a way to set some tent up in some corner. If you have the bug like I do, I really want to grow in greenhouse conditions. I think that the type of plants that I like growing and that I really want to grow, they do better in those sort of conditions. And this is a fantastic way of supplementing those conditions in a home to orchids. You have a lot of flexibility. You could go mild or wild. You could have a more arid environment if you wanted. You could have a more moist environment if you wanted. Again, it gives you the ultimate flexibility to have complete control over whatever environment you choose to provide for whatever plants you choose to grow. It has absolutely helped me take my orchid growing to the next level. I would not be able to have 75% of these plants if I didn't have a tent or some way of maintaining my humidity and maintaining my environment year-round for them and having completely stable conditions. If I have one suggestion to you guys, if you're going to decide to dive into this side of growing and look into growing into a tent or some sort of environment like this, don't be afraid to spend a little bit of money up front on technology. What I mean by that is the better your lighting is, the better your plants are going to do. The more automation that you put into it, the easier it's going to be on you to maintain said environment for these plants and make your life easier. Growing orchids is tough enough. There is so much work that goes into maintaining the plants, their mounts, feeding them, yada yada yada, all that. Anybody who grows orchids knows that. Anybody who's getting into the trade should know that. It's a lot of work. It doesn't have to be. If I grew everything potted, I could grow it quite differently, a lot more stress-free, but I love growing in mounts. I think that it's better for the plants, it looks better, it appeases me more, and in order for me to do that, this is basically the only way. If I wanted to create a very, very hot environment in my house without making myself miserable, this would be the only way. If I wanted to create an extremely cool environment, this would be one of the only ways. Again, it would be tricky, you'd have to figure out a way to air condition it. I've been looking into a cool growing setup similar to this for quite some time, but I just can't justify it yet. I think that it would be really, really tough to do, and I think that the moisture would be very tough to mitigate inside of a home without having some sort of a drain or something. Honestly, it'd be really, really tough. Think about a Coke can when it's cold and it's hot outside, you have the condensation. On the reverse side of that, you would have that on the inside of a tent or on the outside of a tent, and it would sweat constantly if you had a cool growing setup, and you would really have to find a good way to mitigate that moisture. So I would maybe steer clear of that if you were trying to grow in a home, unless you have a terrarium or something you can really contain the moisture in. But as far as a tent goes, it would be difficult to do unless you had a naturally cool environment and some way to mitigate the moisture. So I grow intermediate in this tent. Again, I have temps from high 50s, around 58 or so in the wintertime at night, all the way up to about 73, 74 during the day. And in the summertime, I range anywhere from 63, 65 at night, all the way up to 82, 83 during the day. But since I grow in a home, like I said earlier, ambient temperature, ambient humidity plays a huge factor. I have a window I can open up and warm up or cool off my grow room. I have air conditioning, central heating that I can use to also cool off or warm up my grow space. I can close the window and open it as I please to utilize natural or artificial means of doing so. And it really does help you create a stable and balanced environment for your plants. I have a room separate from all of the rooms in my house. That way I can let it get cool in here without bothering me too much. Honestly, it doesn't impact my electric and heating bill too badly. Because I use LED lighting and because everything's automated and only comes on when it has to and doesn't run full time, it's very easy to maintain and it's very easy to keep affordable all year long. I'm not battling and dealing with the extremes of the outdoors, the hot sun, the cold winter, and so on and so forth. No matter what, all year long, these plants stay in a condition that is pretty much tolerable to humans. It might be sweatshirt weather in this room sometimes in the mornings or at night during the winter, but it's never freezing. It's never too bad. It might be pretty warm sometimes in the summer. You might want to be in here in a tank top, but it's never 100 degrees. So the tent has really helped me, again, create an environment that is optimal for orchids all year long. And though it was a little bit of an investment over time, the overall investment that I've put into this versus the enjoyment and the results that I've got out of it, it's completely unparalleled. There is absolutely no comparison. Priceless, 100% worth it. And if you guys are thinking about doing this, I 100% encourage you to buy a tent and start getting into the game, because if you think you're limited by growing in a home, you cannot have greenhouse conditions, you cannot grow the type of plants that you want to grow, that is malarkey. I promise you, the proof is in the pudding, and a tent is definitely a great way to go if you want to expand your collection and have a little bit more flexibility. Oh, look at that. That's my cue.
Few moments later.
Flexibility in the way you grow and options in the type of plants and the variety of plants that you can grow. So as always guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed my video. I hope you learned a little something, and until next time, please stay safe and happy growing.